Welcome, welcome once again to the Radical Imagination. Moneyed interests have always had an outsized influence on the country since its inception. Large corporate interests and the growth of obscene wealth among the billionaire classes today have determined governmental priorities, allow losses by the rich to be absorbed and manipulated as they buy off compliant politicians. Michael Harrington, one of the founders of the Democratic Socialists of America, called it the antisocial socialization of the economy. President Calvin Coolidge simply said that the business of America was business. Government was there to further business interests. Attempts by various movements to regulate or curtail this destructive greed and the misery it has produced for millions of Americans has had mixed results. Backlashes to these attempts have often used violence, threats of violence, an ever more militarized police, and the jailing and assassinations of key leaders as weapons to combat these movements and progressive change. Who wins this tumultuous round and the election will determine the fate of our democracy and the survival of the species. Today in the Radical Imagination, we've invited two famed veteran labor organizers and community activists to discuss the election and attempts to regulate greed on Wall Street. Ray Rogers is an iconic community organizer, union strategist, labor and human rights activist. He's the founder and director of the New York City-based Corporate Campaign Incorporated and has led some of the most well-known and largest anti-corporate campaigns in our history. He's in the forefront of trying to repeal the New York State stock transfer tax rebate, which would generate about $13 billion or more every year for the resources working class people need. And as always, it's a joy to have Judy Jorrisch back to co-host. She brings decades of experience and political wisdom as a community organizer and activist, familiar with the colorful and contentious political battles of the city. She's the founder of a groundbreaking music and health wellness initiative called Breathe the Music Network that addresses childhood asthma and cutbacks in-school music programs. So
Hello.
Welcome both of you to
Hello.
this very, very important show. And of course, Judy, you've been telling me that we need to get Ray on here because he's involved with a super important project. And I'm blessed and very grateful for both of you to be here today to discuss what you've been doing.
Well, we're certainly glad to be here, and I'm real happy to be here with Judy with all the great work she's done.
Absolutely.
Glad to be here with you with all the great work that you've done.
And tell our audience, because this is so important, this bill, and so many of us aren't aware of some of the ins and outs of this. So tell us about this bill that you're trying to work with and get passed.
I would say the bill that we're talking about today to repeal the stock transfer tax rebate for fat cats and do it now. This is the most important piece of legislation that we could hope to pass in 2025. If we're able to pass this bill, it would mean recouping $13 to $20 billion a year, every single year, $13 to $20 billion to address the most serious social needs in this state. Right now, what you've got is the stock transfer tax was something that from 1905 to 1981, it was in place. In 1981, they started rebating all the billions of dollars back to the stockbrokers. They don't collect the tax, all right? Yeah. Just imagine how much money has been lost since 1981 till now. We're talking not just tens of billions, but hundreds of billions of dollars that should have gone to the state. Every time I walk out my door in New York City, or I go up to Rochester, or anywhere in the state, I have to walk over homeless people. Yeah. It's a crying shame. The hunger problems, the children, the tens of thousands of children, people that are living in our homeless shelters. There's no reason for it. And here we got billions of dollars sitting there for the unions and other groups to get on board and get this thing passed. We just need, the bill is there. Now we've had an amended bill to rebate, to rebate the money back to the state, recoup it. And
this would be a tiny, tiny sales tax.
Sales tax.
What would you call it?
I tell you what, if we go out and buy a toaster, right, New York, what it's going to cost us like 8.75% tax?
Yep.
Or, okay, this is a minuscule tax, 1/10 to 1/4 of 1% on the sale of corporate stocks. 1/10 to 1 stock transactions. Okay, max about 1/4 of 1%. And the bill is the bill that was introduced was by Assembly Member Phil Steck and Senator James Sanders, New York State Senator. And I'm going to tell you, to me, they're heroes. And every legislator that co-sponsors this bill and gets on board, they're heroes. Why? Because they're challenging the most powerful business leaders in this state. And they're challenging the governor and the head of the Assembly and the Senate. They're challenging them and saying, this thing needs to be passed and be passed now.
You know, the incredible thing is how people are completely ignorant of these kinds of backroom deals that are momentous. You know, so 1981, this was part of the whole Reagan transformation, revolution of trickle-down economics, which is what Trump wants to bring back, which is to shift even more money to the billionaire class. That's why Elon Musk is there. Mm-hmm. That's why all of these others are quietly supporting him in the background. They're not even afraid to come out and say that they are, but there's billions going to him because of these kinds of numbers that they will secure. And so 81, we saw a shift, and that was right on the cusp of the Wall Street having put in this emergency control board in New York, which took control of New York City finances. Yeah. So explain how their PR campaign to say this would be bad for ordinary people is not true, because they have been doing all kinds of advertisements saying this will hurt the union's pensions, this will hurt the family trader, your little stock portfolio. Right. Yeah. These people are conducting millions of transactions every hour. Other people are doing it once a month, once a year. It's a very different taxing process for them. So explain that.
Okay, the reason that so much money could be drawn in from this tax, and it's not going to affect, workers' pension funds. It's one thing it's going to do. It's going to be good for the economy. But what in essence it's doing is, these are the stock speculators, the very people who created the 1929 stock crash, and then the crash in 2008. It's the very same people. These the billionaire class. The tax speculators.
The speculators, yeah.
Okay.
The day traders.
The day traders, all right? But what they do is they do these trades with computers in nanoseconds. Mm-hmm. So they do billions of trades, and just pennies on a trade adds up to billions of dollars, okay? And this is money that we're simply saying, instead of going to these rich, rebated back to these rich financial institutions.
And their profits, by the way, are an all-time high.
Oh, God,
so
unbelievable.
Let's make that clear. So look, we're talking about a few pennies here.
A few pennies. And the people that are, I'll give you an example. KKR, famous company that's done so much damage to our country. JP Morgan Chase, Jamie Dimon. These are the type of people, Schwartzman, okay? These are the people
Blackstone, Blackstone.
Blackstone, yeah, Blackstone, Schwartzman. People who've done tremendous damage, to the citizenry of not only of New York State, but all around the country, and in some places all around the world, okay? Yeah. They're the ones that sit on the boards of Citizens Budget Commission, the Partnership for New York City, SIFMA, which is the big securities lobby. Agency. They're the ones that are opposing it, all right? Are you kidding me? Look at what Jamie Dimon, 3-year compensation from 2020 to 2022 was over $100 million. KKR, they have chairs, right?
Yeah.
They each made over $600 million over those 3 years. That's over $1 billion. They're the ones that are opposing this rebating this money back to the state. The state keep it, recoup it, and it's just it's the epitome of greed. Okay, you name it. I mean, they have no conscience, they have no compassion, they have no empathy. There's no reason when we walk out the doors from this studio today that we should be walking over people that are homeless people and children. You know, it's just unbelievable.
And then you look and they say, well, we'll have to raise the fares in the city and the MTA. We're going to put police in the subway to monitor people jumping a turnstile for $2.90 because we have to get that money to run the MTA
And
rather
CUNY and
than
SUNY aren't
yes,
able
and
to do their
shutting
job.
down
Shutting down,
education,
Right.
closing of schools, teachers having to pay for supplies themselves, and one day of this tax would finance most of the budget holes in the New York City budget.
We're talking from around 52 to $79 million a day that would be collected. That's per day, let alone 13 to $20 billion per year. Let me give you an example of what we're talking about here in terms of the money where this money is going to go. Because what I was involved in with the legislators, the senator and some of the members' office, was where the allocations would go. Where will this money go that's collected? I mean, that should be
they're
everybody's
asking
mind.
you now.
Yeah.
No,
I was.
You're going to tell them, right?
I'm going to tell the audience here the importance of this bill and where these billions of dollars are going to go. How it's going to benefit all New Yorkers.
Right.
There is no bill in our legislature now or in the foreseeable future that would do more good to meet the needs of New Yorkers, the well-being of New Yorkers, than to repeal the stock transfer tax rebate.
Mm-hmm.
So let me just be clear. What
Yep.
you're saying is that what you were able to insist happen is that the bill designate the areas of need that the money that would be collected would go to, so there would be no
Thank you.
shenanigans
Yeah.
after the money
It's a
starts to be
great point.
collected and get siphoned back to them in some way or be used for things other than the absolute needs of New Yorkers.
Exactly.
So that's very unique in this.
And I'll tell you, something that you said earlier, Judy, was the transit system. Look at how much money to ride on the transit system, the bus or the subway. I mean, when you're a worker or you're a student or you're a very poor person, how can you afford almost $3 a ride? Public transit should be just that.
When you're making minimum wage,
When you're making minimum
what's the
wage.
portion of a subway fare to $15 an hour?
Right. Now, let me give you an example. If we start raising money, this is based on recouping $13 billion a year. We say 13 to 20 billion, but let's take the low level, 13 billion. Okay, for transportation, 35% of that money, or $4.55 billion every year, extra money would come in to public transit and transportation. $4.55 billion a year. I think that would do a lot for our
Right.
transportation systems, okay? Climate change.
To just say this for a second. So it's a stock speculator paying pennies on one transaction
right.
versus a minimum wage worker, $15 an hour, paying a third of an hour's salary, $3, to go on the subway.
To make
Right.
up for
Judy,
these social programs. that
$3
are
is
taken away.
no 1/5. It's a
Yeah.
fifth
A
of
fifth,
their
20%.
yeah. It's
that
a
hour that they're working.
yeah.
Right.
20% of your hour
Right.
is going to just get to work
Yeah.
in the first hour, and we're talking about pennies on billions of dollars. And when we say pennies, it's literally pennies. And we have trouble understanding what a billion is.
Yeah.
Really?
Judy has a great way of putting things in perspective,
Yeah,
believe me.
absolutely.
So
No idea. Yeah.
$1 billion, if they're making 5% interest in the bank, just keeping it there, is $100,000 an hour. $100,000 an hour on $1 billion interest. So think of what that is per day,
Per day, for a year. Right.
versus 20% of 1 hour. going to just get to work for a minimum, for a student, for a minimum wage worker. So the fact that they think it's okay to then put the police, and how much do the police cost your tax dollars, to be in the subway, to catch the kid who can't afford to go in the subway. So the cost to the public to exact $3 out of, and they're saying it's going to go up, and the postage stamp is going to go up again, and every cost is being exacted out of the people who can least afford it.
And so again, the monies would be allocated to continue.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm going to go, because this is very important. This is the heart of what we're talking about, and anybody listening to the program. Also, with respect to climate change, the environment, clean water, the parks, etc., 25% of the money would go in that direction, okay? But let's talk about education and healthcare. When I was involved in this, I actually put a hold on the campaign because nothing in the bill was directed towards education and health. Nothing was ever allocated for healthcare or education. I said, look, you can't have this kind of money coming in that's not address healthcare and education. First of all, they're two of the biggest lobbies in the state.
Just for our information for our viewers.
The original bill.
The original bill, when did this get started?
When did the original bill?
How long have we been?
When it was introduced, I think, when they were trying to push it and pass it back in 1981. Not 1981, I mean 2020, 21.
Okay.
It's been 4 or 5 years, okay?
I see.
I'm trying to live in the present right now and get this thing passed,
exactly.
all right?
Okay.
But what I did was I said to the legislators, I said, listen, we need to get health care and mental health, because they kind of separate health care and mental health, and education in this allocations. The only money for education there was, which was good, was directed at SUNY and CUNY.
Right.
But here's what education would now get 15% or $1.95 billion invested in primary and secondary schools, CUNY and SUNY. So there was no money for primary and secondary schools. Now there is. Now let's talk for a minute to all you faculty members at SUNY and CUNY, two of the greatest educational systems in this entire country and around the world. Based on the low amount of $13 billion recouped each year, and it could be a lot more than that, SUNY and CUNY would each get $325 million, okay, to put into their budgets for what the needs of SUNY and CUNY are. Now I'm going to tell you, how many campuses are there with CUNY? Maybe 20 or so here in the city?
Yeah.
And SUNY maybe about the same, a little bit more, 25, right?
Yeah.
Can you imagine what $325 million could do for these two institutions? Incredible. All the programs, all the projects, the faculty, you name it. I mean, it'd be incredible.
Free higher education.
And this is why the heads of the Professional Staff Congress, CUNY, and the United University Professions, okay, they need to get behind this bill. They say they support it, but damn well, don't just say you support it, because at the other hand, they'll say, oh, but there's no pathway to get it. What do you mean there's no pathway to get it?
Right.
Well, the head of the legislatures, and the governor, they'll veto it, even if the legislators support it.
Well, that's why these are the people who are working, that could block it. These are the people in the legislature, the heads of the two houses, and the governor who could block it.
Yes.
They have to hear from all of New York and all of the unions to say we won't allow it. Your election is on the line, just as the real estate boards and the Wall Street donors are telling you, do what we say. It's time that the voters also come back and say, this is ridiculous. The city is going to the dogs, as everybody says. It's not the same city because they've exerted such control over these politicians. Yeah. And that's what's got to change.
We're talking New York Assembly Speaker Carl Heastie and Senate Majority Leader Leader Andrea Stewart Cousins. They are key players, and the governor. And what I'm being told, even by union leaders out there, well, they say it's not the right time. It's not the right time. Well, when the hell is going to be the right time? I can tell you, it may not be the right time for some of these political leaders whose pockets are being stuffed with cash from these institutions that don't want to pass the CBC, Partnership for New York City, etc. Okay, it may not be the right time for them, but I can guarantee you that for the tens of thousands of people that are living in shelters, for the people that don't have adequate health care, okay, for the needs, the basic needs of people, it's the right time, and that right time is long past. Get the damn thing passed in
And that's
2025.
exactly what we're hearing, why I hear from voters about why they're so furious with the Democratic Party and why they will support somebody like Trump, because they think the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Well, the enemy of your enemy is still your enemy. And these Democrats have been saying this. I remember going to lobby when Reagan was first elected, and he started to really implement these cutbacks in social services. And we went down and we were lobbying, and they were saying, well, we can't act like sore losers. We have to wait. We have to wait. They've been telling us to wait since 1981. They've been on the defense, and this is why people are angry, and we have to push them to say, either you fight for us now, or you will never win again. No, there will never be a time. So you're exactly right about that.
The presidents of the colleges, CUNY and SUNY, I mean,
let alone the unions,
they
the
should be jumping
administrators.
up and down.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean,
Look, I've written them. I've
it's
called them.
Yeah.
Okay. I've done the same thing with the heads of all these major public sector unions.
Right.
Okay. And the message that comes back, we're all for it, but will anybody sit down and meet with you and really talk about how to get this thing passed?
Here, we're going back to, they're controlled by the same donors because they're worried about contributions. They're worried about their election. So it's got to come from the grassroots. Just as we saw in the universities around the political issues in Gaza and in Israel, they are vulnerable to people lobbying them, as they have to be accountable. Yeah, they have to be accountable to people on these issues, because it's coming. The city is being destroyed, and here's a pathway. Talk about a pathway. This is a pathway to salvation for the city. It was once a city that was owned by the people, and there was a shift in the 80s from a city that supported the arts, the people, the working people who ran the city, to a city that supported
housing and so on.
All that, the Mitchell-Lama housing, the public housing, the free arts for students, the subway passes, all the social programs that made it such a beautiful city and beloved, and where people wanted to live. And everyone you talk to now saying the city's not the same. Well, there's a reason it's not the same, because these people have seized control, and we've got to wrest it back. It's in our hands.
Where are we right now with this?
Well, let me just go down a couple more things that's important, okay?
Sure.
For those who are concerned about health care and mental health, the low figure $13 billion, there will be $1.3 billion every year invested in health care and mental health. That's extra from what you see in the budget.
And isn't that a public safety issue? Isn't the issue now about what we're seeing is not crime in the old sense? Most of the violence is a result of mental stress.
Very disturbed individuals.
Yes, because of cutbacks in services, and because of the stress created by 2 years of COVID, 30,000 deaths. People are suffering, grieving, without any support or safety nets. So mental health is not just a health issue, it's a public safety issue, as we see.
And a political issue.
And you want to know something?
Yes.
We living in New York City. You know, you can go down to Union Square, go anywhere in the city, okay? Go to the Bronx, go to the Queens, go to Brooklyn, go to Staten Island, go to Queens. And you will see people, it happens all the time in New York City, screaming at you, okay? Calling you every vulgar name, threatening your life. We see what happens on buses and subways. It's a mental health crisis. We need to address it, okay? Let me just real quickly, affordable housing. 10% of the money would go to affordable housing. Now, where this is critically important is NYCHA, all right? With respect to NYCHA, we have horrible conditions throughout the NYCHA housing. There's about 500,000 people that live in NYCHA housing, okay?
Because the maintenance, what do you call those? The escrow amounts for maintenance have been decimated, and they have to be replenished, either by corruption or bad political decisions. So this money to replenish what public housing is, to be maintained, is of critical importance.
And there are major efforts within the city with the outfits like the Real Estate Board of New York and some of these big real estate people, they don't want NYCHA housing, okay? They just want expensive high rises, and they want to get rid of as many poor people as possible,
Right.
stick them on the edge of the city, but make sure we can bring them in to do the dirty work that nobody else wants to do, all right? Then,
So this would be for maintenance to refurbish NYCHA housing, what people have been screaming about to get the housing fixed.
right,
Because
Elevators work.
yeah, so the
plumbing and
exactly, and the more
basic
you let them
services.
decay, the more validation they have to do away with it. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy to allow NYCHA to decay, because then they have reason
It's
to come in and
brainwashing.
take it. So this is not just a money issue. It is part of like Project 2025.
Political strategy.
This is a plan. It's a political strategy for regaining control of this prime real estate and getting rid of working and poor people in New York. So we have to take control of these policies. So are you saying also the ways that people can contact their legislators? We were going to show you the names of the people to lobby and how to contact you about how to be involved in this. All right? Because
Right.
this is a grassroots campaign.
a grassroots campaign, let me tell you one of the important elements of the grassroots campaign is not just getting the labor unions involved, because they are the main force that could get this thing passed, okay? But NYCHA, we need to, I'm trying to reach out to the resident councils. About 95% of NYCHA inhabitants, residents, are covered by a tenant council or resident council. I understand there's about 200 or more of them. They're a powerful political lobby if they're organized. So damn it, what was a better thing to organize them around than getting this kind of money to come into NYCHA, okay?
Exactly. And
So-
when we're also talking about 600,000 residents. The tenants of NYCHA are by themselves a population larger than most cities in the United
Yes,
States.
yes.
600,000 people. Most major cities in America are 200 to 300,000 people. This is an enormous population of native New Yorkers that deserve the most basic human housing. It's barbaric to allow the housing to decay like that.
It's totally in their interest. You mentioned, you just said unions could get this done. Why aren't they?
You know, Jim, that's a good question. They say they support this thing, but they bought into the thing. Now is not the right time. Well, you want to know something? All these financial powers out there, the big corporations, financial institutions, they say to workers, now is not the right time to organize a union. You don't need that. So they're buying into I don't know where these union leaders' heads are at, because believe me, with most of the major union leaders in this city, I have sent them letters, I'm making phone calls, calling their legislative directors as well as they themselves into their offices, and none of them yet have been willing to sit down and talk with me. They'll send a statement out. We support this, we supported it in the past. That is not creating a movement to get a bill this important passed.
Judy,
Yes.
you've been hearing this since the 80s, so we know.
Right. Well, this is also why they can't deliver on workers' votes the way they used to do it in the 60s and 70s, because they're not aligned with their members' interests. So to all the union members out there, of which there are depleting numbers, you've got to put pressure on your leader, because it's also that the members feel there's no pathway to make my leadership move. But we've got to do this together. We have to hold our leaders accountable, whether they're elected in the unions or elected politically.
And what about the Democrats in the city? Where's
Well-
that now?
We have a Democratic legislature. This thing should,
Right.
Democratic governor, Democratic
sail
legislature. This thing should be a no-brainer.
Absolutely.
I mean, I have a hard time thinking of voting for anybody,
Right.
any legislator in New York State, New York, that would not support the repeal of the stock transfer tax rebate.
Right.
None whatsoever.
Right. So we got some people who made major safety legislation for tenants in New York. They want to undo that. This never ends. It's not like you win something and then you sit back and go away and think it's going to work. When we do that, they come back and repeal. We win something and then we forget about it. So it's a constant battle for more democracy, more funding for working people, or less. It's never going to stop. People are always going to fight over it. So everybody who is going to vote has to let the people they're voting for know that this is a critical piece of whether or not they're going to be supported. We have an election in a week. There are state legislators, there are different elected officials. Where do they stand on passing this? Because even Congress people who don't vote on this can exert pressure on the state legislators. Jerry Nadler, AOC, any of your congressional representatives can pick up the phone and say to the state legislator, what are you doing on this? We need this money coming into the city.
You're holding it up.
Yes, we have a website. Greed VS stands for versus, so greedvsneed.org.
Okay.
Go to that website because we have a two-phase strategy.
We're going to put it up on the.
Yeah.
Okay. We have a two-phase strategy. One is going after those legislators that decide that they're for greed, and we will put on our chart. They will be listed as for greed. Okay. The ones that support the legislation are for need, okay? Those who say, well, we don't know, we're sitting on the fence. No, you're not. You're either for greed or you're for need.
Because you're going to vote on the budget, so they're not on the fence on the budget. They're going to say which side they're on.
And you know what the problem with the budget is? They pass a budget and everybody says, great, the budget's passed, the needs are met. And then we walk out a door and we trip over the homeless person, okay?
Because the money never gets to the places it's supposed to. Right?
Exactly.
Because it's a covered up process. So when you talk about where this money is going to go, that's not something that gets spoken about a lot in any political campaign. How much money is going where?
And you want to know something?
Now,
this is very important,
though.
what Judy brings up here.
Right.
I have said to everybody I'm working with, including the legislative offices, we get this thing passed, our job is not over. We need to make sure that that money
Actually gets.
does not replace other money that was in the budget, so you're going to take that out and use it for some perks or something. No, this money is extra money to address these very serious needs that are not being addressed today and haven't been addressed for decades.
No.
So can you talk more about what this sales tax is, like the mechanism? Because people have really never heard of this, and they sort of look at you and say, well, what are you talking about? How is that possible?
It's been talked about for a while, but you're right.
Most people aren't paying attention.
Right. But
So we have to bring to people's attention that this is something that could transform the city. This isn't some technical backroom.
it's pretty simple, like getting a toaster, like Ray said.
Yeah,
Right.
everything we buy, we pay a sales tax for.
So
why do they get it
don't
back?
they? Yeah.
Right.
They were collecting the tax, and then in 1981 they stopped collecting the tax. And because of that, New York City and New York State has lost not just tens of billions, but hundreds of billions of dollars that could have been recouped.
So it's not that they just stopped.
Yeah.
Somebody passed a bill
Yeah.
that said, I have an idea, let's give all that money back to Wall Street.
Exactly.
And
who is
then
this
it'll
now back in
trickle down.
Who is this, Judy?
I don't know. Tell
Well,
me.
the very
1981,
the people that represent the Citizens Budget Commission, the Partnership for New York City, SIFMA, the securities outfit.
Who's mayor there?
What's that?
Who's the mayor?
In 81,
Yeah, the 80s, early 80s. Koch.
it was Koch. Koch,
But
right?
this is a piece of state legislation.
Right, but okay.
Yes.
But
No, that's
as you were
important.
just saying, it's important that the city political leaders understand the importance of this
Okay.
for everybody in New York City. I mean, New York City was what, half of New York State in population?
Yeah, and they run on a slate. They're, your Democratic club in each area, they're a team all together, and they support each other or don't. So the issue here is that a very big shift happened in the city when it went from, it's why does everybody love Barcelona so much? Because Barcelona is a city that has policies that support housing. They made it illegal in Barcelona for corporations to come in and buy up blocks of apartment buildings and raise the prices. Parkchester was a union built, was it not a union, but it was built by Metropolitan Life as a working class cooperative.
It's in the Bronx.
Yes, it's in the North Bronx.
North Bronx.
It was like amalgamated housing on the west side, the union built housing. We had complexes, beautiful complexes like Morningside Heights on 125th Street,
Yeah.
Parkchester. A few years ago, those apartments were affordable.
Morningside Gardens,
Morningside Gardens, yes, on Broadway and 100.
20 by the.
It's a magnificent complex with gardens, with classes.
Yeah.
It's a socially
middle and
supported.
working class.
Yes, beautiful apartments
Right.
that have a social conscience. It's the kinds of
Yeah.
housing complexes and communities you see in Barcelona
Right.
that gives people a feeling of
Yeah.
joy and community. That's why people love going there.
Yeah.
They don't even know why they love Barcelona so much, but it was built by people with a social conscience, from the architects to the developers, and they made it illegal for these corporations. What they're doing, they're buying up blocks of housing throughout the Bronx, throughout the boroughs, and then they raise the prices and they make exorbitant profits off
Force
of that.
people out.
Yes, so you're no longer buying from individuals.
Blackstone's a good example of this when you talk about Stuyvesant Town, how they try to basically raise all the prices, force the people
Yeah,
out.
good.
They got hit with a lawsuit.
And they would
but
defeat, the
he's one of
people
he's one of
defeated
the
them.
people that are opposing this stock transfer tax rebate. But,
What about Co-op City? Would that fall into?
oh,
what you're trying
sure,
to- yeah,
it's
as well.
it's a co-op. All this.
Right.
One
would
thing about
take
the
it
Real
over.
Estate Board of New York, they would love to take my complex, which I live in East River Landing in East Harlem. They don't want any public housing. They don't want any Mitchell-Lama programs. They don't want any NYCHA programs. They're trying to close down some NYCHA complexes right now down in Midtown to build some
Grab
super,
the-
right.
Yeah.
But I want to make sure I address one thing. You brought it up, and I'm not sure if maybe
Go back, yeah.
talked to. The other side says, what's going to happen? We're going to lose jobs in New York City and New York State. The New York Stock Exchange is going to pull out if you put this tax.
Go
And
someplace
that
else.
is bogus. That is what I call bullshit. Okay?
go.
The New York Stock Exchange isn't going to pick up and move
Go to
out of here because you have
Greenwich,
1/4 of
Connecticut.
1%
Yeah.
tax on these. It doesn't really affect them, okay?
Right.
In fact, it should be a lot more. The other thing is, it's going to hurt workers. It's going to hurt their pension funds. It's going to hurt their families. No, it isn't. Because when you talk about our public pension funds, these are long-term investments. These aren't these stock speculators doing these second
Second
traders,
trades,
okay?
Transactions, right.
Okay, so it's not going to affect anybody's public pension funds. So these are the two of the biggest reasons that they give to scare everybody and make people say, oh, we can't do this now. Now is not the right time. Let me say, and I want to say particularly to all the union leaders out there, get behind this bill and get the damn thing passed now, because if you don't, you're not living up to your responsibility as a union leader. I'll tell you that right now. All right? This piece of legislation is great for all New Yorkers. 99.99999%. In fact, I would say 100%, because even the rich ones that want to kill it, if we have money to fill potholes and then their limousine won't end up in a pothole, they'll be fixed.
The other thing about this, in terms of they're paying not just their fair share, they are to use the city, to use our police, to use the public roadways, to use the fire department, to use our public
Parks, the museums, and so
well, the services
culture.
to run their programs.
Right.
I mean, how many police, how many public services, the water, the electricity, everything that it takes to run a business is paid by taxes. And why do they get waivers on taxes that run the very city they're supporting? It's obscene and it's theft.
Jim,
Yes.
you were a professor at John Jay College for many years, right?
Yes, I was.
You're now doing other work at another college and stuff,
Yes.
okay? You know what an important institution the City University of New York is.
Absolutely.
How important it is. Look here's some real money that can go into the City University of New York and United University Professions. So I write these union leaders. I send them individual letters, but I also send a letter that goes to Melinda Person, the head of New York State United Teachers. I send it to Michael Mulgrew, the head of United Federation of Teachers. I send it to Davis, the head of Professional Staff Congress CUNY, and I send it to Fred Cowell, the head of United University Professions. So it's not like they don't know about this, and it's not like they don't know that I'm reaching out to all of them. Damn it, get on board.
And we're
Well,
going to
meet
reach
with
out
me.
to them as well.
Here's
We're
the
going to try to
yes.
shame them into coming here too.
Maybe that's
may
what
have
it's
to
going to
may
take.
come to that.
Let them sit here and tell you why
Yeah,
they don't
why-
really
yeah.
get behind this thing, or just sit down and talk.
Be
about
honest.
Let me ask you something else and tell you something. You also have to be addressing the students and every faculty member
Yeah, absolutely.
to be lobbying every single day. We
It's in
can't
their
just reply.
interest,
We
for
can't
Pete's
just
sakes.
reply. It's in the interest of every New
Yeah.
York resident. Everything that we need to make this city a livable place,
Humane,
a humane and
Lovable
livable
place
city
that we
that we
love.
used to love.
we used to love. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there was a shift in the 1980s. It came with Reagan, and you were right to bring up who was mayor. It came with Koch.
And who was the governor at that time too?
It was a Carey? I don't remember.
We'll look it up.
Pataki, I forget,
One of them.
1981. But it's, Koch won as mayor because he went down to Wall Street, he went to the Emergency Control Board, and he said, I'm your guy. I'm your guy. I will do your bidding. And it was a culture shift in New York that changed it from a multiracial, multi-ethnic melting pot into a corporatist, Wall Street, real estate run town. And yes, the rich have always been the moneyed class who've had control, but the New York political class had always been a populist class in the tradition of the
Ethnic, progressive leaders that we had.
who really,
all
you know,
backgrounds.
the populist mayors of New York that really fought for the people of the city.
LaGuardia, Wagner.
LaGuardia was
was the best, yeah.
was the prime example
Even
of
your
these.
boyfriend there, Lindsay.
Yes,
We were
John
close.
V. Lind. Yes,
Okay.
the most
know, but just-
abused politician
Yeah,
in
but-
America. But we were.
Just a little tease. Yeah,
Yes,
okay.
yes.
He was,
I was 9 years.
he was
Anyway,
9 years old. He's a
he-
handsome guy. Okay.
No, he was an amazing
Yeah, he was
advocate
good.
for the people.
Yes,
but
he
it
was.
was, but LaGuardia was really the essence
was
of
the-
that.
Yes.
And that was the shift that took place when Koch got elected, and why there was a dump Koch movement for so many years.
Yeah.
Because people recognized that there was a major shift taking place. So when you talk about this, tell people what they need to do, just as individual citizens of New York. Who do we have to contact? If we're members of organizations and are elected officials, what do we do?
Well, you can go to the website greedversusneed.org. Greedvsneed.org. And we have a charts there that show where all the legislators, the members of the Assembly and the members of the Senate, as well as the head of the Assembly and the Senate, where they stand on the bill, whether they're for need, or they're for greed, or they haven't responded. Eventually, all the non-responses will go into greed. They have to communicate with their state legislators to get behind this. So if you go to the website, you can actually see whether your member of the legislature is already on board supporting this.
So what you're asking them to do is
Yeah.
to sponsor this bill,
Yes.
to become a sponsor. So what are the steps that need to take?
By the way,
What is the soonest?
2025. We're really
Right.
things are
So
gonna
when
happen, right?
when is the soonest this could be passed?
Right.
2025. The session goes from January to June.
Okay.
All right. Right now we have on the senators, the 63 senators, there are 17 now that are sponsoring it. Okay.
Okay.
There are 150 assembly members, and right now there are 44 sponsoring it.
You can
That's
definitely
good.
count on them.
Pardon?
You definitely.
Yeah, their
can-
names
they're
are
already
on the
on. They're
bill.
already postponed.
so
And
they're
this
not
is
gonna-
this is all on the website. It'll show you who they are.
Right. Okay.
All right. And I know there are a lot of good assembly members and a lot of good state senators that, if this is really brought to their attention, get their attention, they will support it.
You need a simple majority. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, you need to pass it in the
pass it.
House and Senate. Now, when it comes down to that, people say, "Yeah, I know," but the head of the Senate and the head of the Assembly and the governor,
Yeah.
they're going to kill it. If they don't kill it, the governor will kill it.
Really.
I said, no, not if we have the right grassroots campaign going. They understand there's a price to pay. You are for greed. You are for greed.
Right.
Okay,
This is
so-
what holding people accountable means.
Exactly. And that's the theme of the campaign.
So there are two different steps. There's legislators putting their name to the bill as sponsors, but then it's going to come down to a vote. And that's going to be a head-to-head fight, getting everybody to vote. So step one is having as many sponsors as possible.
And
We
getting
want
people to tell people to.
Yeah,
that
so a
they want
sponsor
it, right.
means that when the bill comes up,
Right. That
they're
you
going to
vote for
say
it, need it,
their name's on that bill.
Right.
Yes, and you're right. They need to vote. When the bill
Right.
comes up, make sure you're there to vote.
Right. They can't be absent.
Just-
They can't be, doing something else. So we,
Mental health day.
yes. And there need to be enough votes that could withstand even a veto.
Also veto.
So is it 60% to override a veto?
I'm not sure. That sounds.
All right,
somewhat
that's-
Sure
we're-
majority.
Yes, so
Uh-huh.
that's 3
Okay.
steps down the road.
They-
Right now,
They need to know that there's a high price to be paid.
Right.
It's still not going to go away. This doesn't get passed in 2025, and we lose billions and billions more dollars that should come into New York City and New York State during the fiscal crisis and everything. They need to know that it's not going to go away, and the governor will be up for re-election. These legislators will be up for re-election.
When is 2026?
I think she's 2026. Yeah,
2026,
yeah. And
So this is a good timing.
yeah, and the other thing is another element of the campaign. If these big players, the partnership, the Citizen Budget Commission, the J.P. Morgan Chases of the world, they want to come out and really oppose this thing, we'll go after them as well. The New York Stock Exchange, if they actually stood up and said, we're going to pull out, which they're not going to do on this, we would say, okay, guess what? You are a public company, and we're going to take you on just like years ago I took on a company called J.P. Stevens, okay? Or some of the big American airlines, those companies. We'll come after you the same way we did them. If you're going to start threatening to pull out, you're not going anywhere, all right? Yeah. And
should we throw in, God forbid, sound like my yeshiva students?
No.
The possibility of Trump getting in. What would that affect? How would that affect it?
well,
No.
this bill
Yeah.
is to counter everything they have designed in Project 2025.
Exactly.
Project 2025 is to create a corporate
Right.
fascist state, a theo, meaning a religious corporate
Exactly.
fascist state. The
So you have
religious
more
part,
aggressive opponents now.
but it's already being enacted. This repeal is Project 2025 was decades in the making. So
Not a surprise.
it will just be expedited, and it'll be implemented in a myriad more ways. This bill is something that could be a protection against that corporatist state, and to make the people have some kind of say
Right.
over our budgets and over our policies.
Right.
it's state legislation, so the federal government can't come in here and
Right.
put a hold on
It's
it.
the state.
This is a state,
A state.
just as the state, they've been working at the state level for years to gain control for corporate states for voting.
Yeah.
So this is to put it in reverse at a state level and city level. And it's up to us.
By the way, I know that we're probably coming near an end.
Yeah,
I
we
can
are.
also be
2 more
reached
minutes.
at 718-852-2808. 718.
So let's just
Eight
put
five
Really
two.
giving that out. And he
Let's-
never sleeps.
Let's just put that
2808.
number back up with the website
Right.
and the telephone
gonna
number
do
so
that,
people can
yes.
see it, how to reach you and how to be involved.
Right, and I'm going to tell you,
Yeah.
I've been a real activist, and the people that work closely with me, this is all being done so far as
Pro bono.
volunteers.
Yeah.
We need resources to put together the kind of campaign necessary to move this thing. We need labor unions to stand up and say, we will assign an organizer from our union to work with you to involve our membership in this thing, okay? We need resources, to pay expenses and stuff. So also if you go to the website, there's a place there you can see where you can contribute to the campaign. I have financed many campaigns myself. This is one I do not have the resources to finance myself. We need help, but we know how to get the job done, and we will get it done, but we need your help. If you're a member of a union, you go to your union leadership, tell them what you heard on this program, and get them on board.
Yeah. Or if you're
Or a NYCHA resident.
Professor, a NYCHA resident, exactly.
All right.
NGOs, you name
It should
it.
be put out. It's so obvious. The majority is us.
Yeah. There's nothing that can stop a united grassroots effort.
Right.
So let's get at it.
And
Good job,
I'll
Ruth.
say the legislators and the union, if the union leaders want to become heroes to the public, this is a bill that they would all be heroes. Any legislator that would be behind this bill, you're a hero. You're standing up against, as you would call it, the
Billionaire class.
billionaire class.
Billionaire classes. Billionaire classes.
It's Bernie who said that, but yes.
That's Bernie. Well, here we
Bless
go.
him.
Bless him, right. And bless you both. And thank you so much. We're going to do some other shows on this, and we're going to get these people on board. And
Jim, you
no, we're going to get them here. They're going to,
Be a good debate.
be a good debate.
I'm anxious to have you make some phone calls to some of these union leaders and say, we like you, come on.
Yeah.
Okay? Just you come
To
on.
discuss
if
this
you'd like
bill.
to come on with Ray
MNN
Rogers and
reaches
Judy Jorrisch.
hundreds of thousands of people, right?
Yeah.
So, don't take us lightly here.
Yeah.
Thank you so very, very much.
Thank you. Your program is all over the state, by the way. You know that.
I would hope so.
Actually, somebody saw it in Germany.
In
It's on
Germany.
Yeah.
Well,
There you go.
And,
All
and in
right.
Barcelona, one would hope. You'll take care of Barcelona, right, Judy?
Yeah, right.
Well, what's funny, when I was on your program before some
done?
years ago,
Is it done?
Wait one second. Yeah.
I walked into my building and people said, I saw you on TV
There
yesterday.
you go. Well, we try our best, and thank you for being here to spread the word. This is so important, and we will carry on and have you guys back again with some of these people that need to hear about this. So thank you all so very, very much. We'll see you again next week on The Radical Imagination.